In the summer of 1916, Europe was gripped by war. The Allies planned a massive offensive along the Somme River in France. Soldiers prepared, unaware of the horrors ahead. Tensions rose as the date approached. Generals Douglas Haig and Ferdinand Foch met in secret, poring over maps. Their goal: break the German lines and relieve pressure on Verdun. The plan relied on artillery and sheer numbers to succeed. On June 24, 1916, the Allies unleashed a week-long artillery barrage. Over 1.5 million shells rained down, intended to destroy German trenches and barbed wire. The earth shook as explosions lit the sky. Despite the bombardment, German soldiers survived in deep dugouts. Their barbed wire remained intact, and machine gun nests stood ready. The Allies underestimated their resilience, setting the stage for disaster. At 7:30 a.m. on July 1, whistles pierced the morning air. British troops climbed from trenches, advancing in orderly lines toward no man's land. They believed the artillery had cleared the way. Machine gun fire erupted as the first wave crossed no man's land. Soldiers fell in droves, cut down by bullets. Within minutes, thousands lay dead or wounded. The advance halted in chaos. July 1 became the bloodiest day in British military history. Nearly 60,000 casualties overwhelmed medical stations. The scale of loss stunned commanders, yet the offensive pressed on relentlessly. Between assaults, soldiers endured squalid trenches. Mud, rats, and constant shelling wore them down. Letters home spoke of despair and hope, a fragile lifeline amid the unending nightmare of war. On September 15, a new weapon rolled onto the battlefield: the tank. These lumbering machines crossed trenches and barbed wire, offering hope, but breakdowns and inexperience limited their early impact. Weeks turned to months as rain turned the Somme into a quagmire. Advances were measured in yards, each gain paid for with blood. Both sides dug in, refusing to yield ground. A young private scribbled a letter home, describing the mud, the fear, and the friends he'd lost. His words, stained with dirt, captured the human cost of the relentless fighting. In late July, German forces launched a fierce counterattack. Artillery and infantry struck Allied lines, reclaiming lost ground. The seesaw of war continued, with neither side gaining a decisive edge. On July 1, the Newfoundland Regiment advanced bravely into the fray. Within 30 minutes, 90% were dead or wounded. Their sacrifice became a symbol of courage and devastating loss. Medics worked tirelessly behind the lines, battling to save the wounded. Amputations were common, and screams filled the air. Supplies ran low as the casualty count soared beyond imagination. By September, the battlefield was a sea of mud. Rain and artillery churned the ground into a swamp, swallowing men and machines. The fighting grew ever more brutal and desperate. On September 15, the Allies launched a renewed push at Flers-Courcelette. Tanks led the charge and some ground was gained, yet German resistance held firm, stalling the advance once more. Amid the chaos, a British soldier risked his life to drag a wounded German to safety. Such acts of compassion flickered briefly, reminders of humanity in a war of unrelenting cruelty. In October, fighting raged around the Anchor Heights. Small gains came at enormous cost, with both sides exhausted. The landscape was a graveyard of shattered trees and broken men. As November approached, cold gripped the Somme. Soldiers shivered in soaked uniforms, frostbite adding to their woes. The offensive slowed, but the generals demanded one final push forward. On November 13, the Allies attacked along the Anchor River. Fog and mud hampered efforts, but some objectives were taken. It marked the last major action of the campaign. By November 18, 1916, the Battle of the Somme halted. Snow fell over a scarred landscape. The Allies had gained just 6 miles at a cost of over 1 million lives. The battle left over 300,000 dead and 700,000 wounded across all sides. Entire communities were devastated, their sons lost forever. The Somme became a symbol of war's futility and horror. The Somme reshaped warfare, introducing tanks and exposing the limits of attrition. It scarred a generation, its lessons echoing through history as a warning of war's devastating toll. Haig defended the offensive, claiming it weakened Germany. Critics called it a senseless slaughter. The debate raged on, with no consensus on whether the sacrifice achieved its strategic aims. A survivor returned home, forever changed. His village welcomed him, but the silence of lost friends haunted him. The Somme's wounds ran deep, beyond the battlefield's muddy graves. Memorials rose across Britain, France, and beyond, honoring the Somme's dead. Names carved in stone stood as silent witnesses to a generation lost in the mud and blood of 1916. Today, the Somme is quiet, its fields green again. Trenches and craters remain preserved as reminders. Visitors walk where soldiers fell, reflecting on a war that shaped the modern world. The 1916 documentary, The Battle of the Somme, captured the fighting for millions. Its grainy footage brought the war home, shocking audiences with the raw reality of trench warfare. Poets like Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon immortalized the Somme in verse. Their words of anguish and defiance gave voice to the soldiers' suffering, resonating through time. Back home, families waited for news. Telegrams brought dread and towns mourned together. Women took up factory work, supporting a war effort that consumed their husbands and sons. French troops fought alongside the British, holding the southern line. Their courage bolstered the offensive, though their losses added to the war's grim toll on France's weary forces. Australian battalions joined in July, facing fierce combat at Pozieres. Their tenacity earned respect, but thousands fell, leaving a lasting mark on Australia's national identity. Canadians fought at Courcelette and beyond, gaining ground through sheer determination. Their losses forged a sense of nationhood, proving their mettle in the crucible of the Somme. Indian soldiers served with valor, braving the Somme's horrors. From Punjab to Bombay, their contributions bolstered the Allies, though their stories often faded from the war's broader narrative. Artillery defined the Somme, firing millions of shells. The noise deafened soldiers and shrapnel tore through flesh. It was a weapon of terror, reshaping the land and lives forever. Pilots flew fragile planes over the Somme, spotting enemy positions. Dogfights raged above, and many crashed in flames, adding a new dimension to the war's relentless carnage. Shell shock plagued survivors, their minds shattered by constant bombardment. Doctors struggled to understand, as men trembled and stared blankly, haunted by memories of the Somme's unrelenting terror. Newspapers spun tales of glory, hiding the Somme's true cost. Posters urged enlistment while governments masked the slaughter. The public cheered, unaware of the grim reality unfolding in France. Mud became the enemy, swallowing boots, guns, and men. Soldiers drowned in it, trapped by its grip. The Somme's quagmire was as deadly as bullets, a relentless foe. Horses and mules hauled supplies through the chaos, often dying under shellfire. Dogs carried messages and pigeons flew above. These unsung creatures shared the soldiers' burden and fate. Nearby French villages were shattered, their people displaced. Homes became rubble as the war crept closer. Civilians endured loss and hunger, caught in a conflict they couldn't escape. Rain, fog, and snow plagued the campaign, turning battlefields into swamps. Weather dictated tactics, slowed advances, and tested endurance. Nature itself seemed to conspire against the soldiers' survival. Sappers dug tunnels beneath German lines, planting mines that erupted in massive blasts. Their unseen work shifted the battle, though many died entombed in the dark, claustrophobic depths. Soldiers sang to lift spirits from Tipperary to hymns. Music echoed in trenches, a fleeting comfort against the roar of war. It bound them together in defiance of death. The Somme strained Allied unity, with leaders clashing over strategy. Public faith waned as losses mounted. It tested governments, foreshadowing shifts in power that would follow the war's end. New tools emerged: tanks, improved shells, and early radios. The Somme was a testing ground, pushing innovation amid carnage. These advances hinted at the future of industrialized warfare. Boys as young as 15 lied to enlist, swept up in patriotism. They faced the Somme's horrors, dying far from home. Their youth underscored the war's indiscriminate cruelty. By November, exhaustion forced a halt. Neither side won decisively, but Germany's reserves were drained. The Somme set the stage for later victories, though at an unimaginable price. The battle's trauma lingered in survivors, shaping art, politics, and memory. It redefined war's meaning, a grim milestone in human history that still whispers lessons of sacrifice and loss. The Battle of the Somme stands as a testament to human endurance and folly. Its fields, now peaceful, hold the stories of millions. We remember, lest we repeat the past's darkest chapters.